Welcome to Everyday Entrepreneurs Everywhere with your host, Chris Parker.
And welcome back to Everyday Entrepreneurs Everywhere. This is Chris Parker, and I am having a conversation with Shyamala Prayaga, who is the vision lead for voice assistants, I believe, in autonomous vehicles for one of the world's largest automotive manufacturers. I will have to preface that the conversation is her own opinion, and so we might not even mention the name of the automotive manufacturer. However, her work there is incredibly important. I was in touch with Shyamala from John Stein from the OVN, basically with the question of how can voice help people with disabilities, for example, vision impaired. And Shyamala has been kind enough to join me from, nearby Detroit, at least in Michigan today. And I'm really, really looking forward to the conversation. So Shyamala, thank you for joining. And can you share with us a bit on what do you do and why are you doing what you do?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. So my name is Shyamala Prayaga, and like you mentioned, I am the voice interaction lead here in an autonomous company. So voice has been my passion for a very long time. So I started in the voice in 2012 because of because of a project I was working on. And that's when I realized the potential of voice. And I have been, I love talking with people. I love interacting with them. I love solving complex problems. And what else could be complex than a voice interaction or voice design? So that is why I picked voice as my, specialty, I would say. And then I like to evangelize a lot, especially when it comes to user experience, design, and voice experiences in general. So I also started my own academy called Voice Digital Assistant Academy, where we train and certify people for voice interaction design. And I also have my own podcast like yours. It's an educational one called The Future is Spoken, where, I'm trying to bring in experts from different industries who are focusing mainly on voice and then talking about the different elements of it.
I love it. And we will put links to all that in the show notes so people can find your podcast and your page and the academy there as well. You mentioned you like solving complex problems. Why? So I would love to dive deeper into, because voice is an emerging and extremely complex problem. What is it that has attracted you to complexity?
I would say it's in my DNA. When I was 3 years old, I would, disassemble the entire radio system and would try to fix it back. I was curious, always curious, like, how does this work? Like, why is the sound coming and where is it coming from and all of those things? So I would try to break it and I would try to see all the different parts and then try to fix it back. So part of it is, by birth, I have this curiosity. And the other is my engineering mindset is always on, which makes me curious about things. And that is one of the reasons why, I like solving complex problems. And the other thing is there are so many untouched areas when it comes to any kind of design. So my interest to solve complex problems started when I think ATMs were launched many, many, many years back in India. And it was very difficult back then just to get into the ATM and try to withdraw money. There was a different kind of psych, or I would say people would have some sort of worry when they were trying to withdraw. And I saw that firsthand with my mom and dad. They were like, I would rather go to the bank and withdraw the money. I'm not withdrawing money from here. So I tried understanding, why is this happening? What is the problem here? Like, why people are not very comfortable? And there were too many things, like, okay, when you enter the card, sometimes it doesn't give you confirmations. And it was all over the place back then. So I saw a lot of the things which helped me get very closer to the human psychology aspects of things. And I realized how complex things could be. And in order to simplify them, we need to have a different mindset. And that is where, solving complex problems or my strong interaction design came out. And I was like, okay, how can I simplify these things so that anyone, irrespective of age, ability, and situation, is able to use those?
Nice. And when we're talking about voice, and maybe a lot of people listening to this are not familiar with what we're actually even talking about because we're speaking with our voices. Can you give your introduction to what is voice And the second question, which will come after that, is why is that complex? So, but first, what is voice? And so people can orient on what we're actually talking about.
So there are different kind of interactions, right? We got used to interacting with our smartphones, and websites were there. Then mobile phone came, and all of these things came. So voice has always been there. We are, like, we started speaking when we were kids. So voice is very natural to us in most scenarios, unless there's a person who has some disability, right? Voice is the most natural modality. So there has always been an effort in the industry, like how can we make it simple for anyone to be able to use the interface with their voice. And that is where and when 2012 Siri was launched, where you can do all sorts of things using your voice commands. You can say play music or find me a Starbucks or any kind of things. You can call a point of interest. So all sorts of things you were able to do through voice. The actual revolution happened when Amazon launched Alexa, right? Because now they introduced a completely different technology, smart speaker, far field technology, and people were able to use it, speak with it, and do all sorts of things, and a lot more than what Siri was able to do. And since then, the uh, revolution has evolved. There are many more companies in this industry. The space is getting very crowded as well. So I would say it's just another modality to interact with any kind of technology or any kind of things, right?
And why is that complex? Because it sounds, because I speak with Siri, and that seems pretty linear, and I can ask questions and I get answers. That doesn't seem complex. I'm asking very facetiously. So why is this a complex world that needs to be solved?
So there are two parts to it. One is the experience part of things, and the other is the technology part of things. What you are encountering is the experience, right? So a lot has gone into the technology to make that experience seamless for you. So you are able to talk with it as if you're talking to a human being. But behind the scene, there are too many things. First and foremost, it is a machine. It is an artificial intelligence system, which is understanding what you have said. Speech recognition system is complex because there are multiple parts to it. The moment you speak something, your spoken words needs to be converted into a machine readable format. And once that is done, the machine needs to then interpret your meaning, like what did you say? So if you said, find me a Starbucks, right? So first it is converted into a machine readable format, and then the system is trying to understand, like, okay, what does that mean? What is Starbucks, right? And then trying to give you a response. So the natural language understanding piece is what does that understanding tries to find the intent of what you said. And then a lot goes even there. And then after that, it goes to the fulfillment logic, tries to find that Starbucks. It needs to know your location information, all sorts of things in order to get you the response. And once that is done, then it has to again send you back the response. Because your original modality was speech, it has to respond back in speech. So then the machine readable a response is converted into text through the text to speech engines, and then it is said to you, or it is spoken back to you. So that is what happens in a very nutshell, I would say. But then in order to, there are, first of all, we all humans speak so differently. You have a different accent, I have a different accent, I have a different slang, I have different pronunciations. It's the same, and that kind of changes the moment we start thinking about people from different regions, different religions, different demographics. That kind of keeps changing. And even the languages, we speak so many different languages. I am a trilingual myself. So I speak multiple languages. So, and there are many people who will be like that. And if the system needs to be able to understand all of the different languages, there's a lot of data which needs to go into that system. And we need to train that system that, okay, this is Spanish, this is English, or whatever the language the user is speaking. The same thing when we talk about the natural language understanding. The moment you say something, how will it know you meant you want to find a Starbucks or something like that? There are many ways the same thing could be said, right? You can say, find me on your Starbucks, or you can say, I want coffee, or you can say like something completely else, right? But your intent is the same. You still want a coffee shop where you can get your coffee. Now, how does the system understand? People can talk in whatever way they want. So there is a natural language piece where we have to train the system with all the different kind of utterances and say like, okay, all of these things means this intent. And that again is a lot of training. You need to constantly keep training the system, like, okay, these are the things which map to this. And then comes the text to speech. with the evolution of, and thanks to the media, like Tony Stark's movies or any movies, the definition of assistant has completely changed. People want a more human-like assistant, right? So you cannot have a completely robotic text to speech. So now there's a lot of effort which is going in order to make the text to speech also human like, where you can have emotions, you can have different kind of variations, the speech, the pitch, the tone, and all of those things as well, even for the response. So a lot of work goes there as well. A lot of data collection happens. You have to hire a voice actor and do a lot of recording and train the system. So the complete backbone of the voice recognition system is artificial intelligence, and a lot of training which goes into training all of these different engines. And that is why it is complex, because it's a constant learning process.
It is definitely complex. And in your world, I'd like to, I think, combine two fascinating emerging worlds. That there's the voice assistants and autonomous vehicles. And I was reading, I clicked through LinkedIn, and I think you were interviewed by Forbes, or somehow it was a Forbes article that was really, talking about why is voice even related to autonomous vehicles. Can you speak to that a bit? Like why is this even a thing?
Absolutely. So I like to call it this way, and I always talk about this thing: when vehicle becomes the driver, voice becomes the companion. So when you are in a world where there is nothing else, you are not driving, you are in the car, and there's complete silence, you will be so, you'll be siloed in first place. You will have a lot of questions, you'll have a lot of concerns. So you would naturally want to talk with something and want to get some information. It could be a customer care agent. You may want to constantly call them and ask them like, okay, what's happening? Tell me this, tell me that. Or it could be any other thing. And that is where, voice becomes your companion. So digital assistants and voice assistants will play a very prominent role to answer your questions, or guide you, or give you proactive information, or just give you the information about what's happening in your surrounding and all of those things. So that is why it is a very important use case. At home, you have convenience, right? At home, you have your smartphones, you have all sorts of things, and it's your comfort place. You are in a place which you know in and out. But in an autonomous car, first of all, it's a completely new space for you. You don't know that car, you don't know the controls. Maybe even if you know, it may change depending on which company you are, which car you have, which autonomous car you have, right? And you're not riding. Most of these cars are like, you're just sitting there. It's like your living room. And in order for you to get comfortable there has to be something which will make you comfortable. And it is just voice.
I can imagine with the increased adoption of voice at home, so people are even more familiar with that sort of modality and way of interacting than when they're sitting actually in a moving living room or a moving room of an autonomous vehicle. That will be a very natural. I remember for myself, it was in 2011. I was at Singularity University, and I was able to sit in a Google car. And I think back then it was on a Toyota chassis, but it was just all of this equipment everywhere, and it was okay. This wasn't a very cozy room at that point. But as autonomous vehicles have progressed, these are really comfortable spaces that sort of, I think, engender natural home-like feelings and interactions. So I can totally see that. And so can I ask, when will I be able to have a fully autonomous voice-enabled vehicle to drive me to the store?
So fully autonomous are like level 5s. Yeah. It will take a couple of more years, at least a decade, before we can say that the vehicles are level 5. We are with level 4 right now, right? Level 4 vehicles will be out pretty soon, in like next 2 or 3 years. But they will be geo-fenced. Like, you will be able to go in a specific location. They will not be like, okay, just drive me whatever and wherever freely. That will take a lot more time, because again, similar to how voice is, autonomous again is a very complex space in first place. A lot of training needs to be done to understand your surroundings, your roads, your everything. And even the driving patterns, which kind of changes. And then, freeway driving is different than your street driving and all of those things. And these systems are constantly learning. It will definitely take a lot more time. But yeah, the voice with level 4 is coming pretty soon.
I love it. I'm definitely looking forward to it. Can't wait, actually. If we turn the page and come back to the sort of the original purpose of this, which is voice for, call it the disabled, or in particular vision impaired. As I shared before, I have a family member who has macular degeneration, and essentially what that means is her eyesight is slowly decaying, really from the middle out. So without me knowing all the science behind it, apparently it's just slowly. In the front of her field of vision, it becomes blurry and then dark, but then she still has sort of this, sight awareness, which, as you can imagine, is frustrating and scary, and it makes it hard to live. And through my work with the Open Voice Network, that also just sparked the thought of, hey, smart people must have been thinking about how voice assistants can help people with this type of situation. So. What is your vision on how voice can help people with disabilities like that?
Yeah, so I spoke to a lot of people for making more inclusive self-driving vehicles, especially for the voice. And I spoke to a lot of people who have a vision impairment. Either they are completely blind or partially blind. And what I have heard is they are already using voice. Voice has already helped them a lot and made it convenient for them to interact with the system day in and day out. If you are using your smartphones, right, then you need to have some sort of screen reader in order to interact with it, especially if the person has some kind of vision impairment. But with voice, it's very natural. It's very natural way to speak. But then there are disabilities which are not linear, right? Disability comes in bundles. It doesn't come as a single disability. So some people are there who are blind but can speak. Some people are there who are blind and cannot speak or hear as well. And some people can speak but cannot hear. So there are variations of things which can happen in this kind of world. So first and foremost thing is, I would like to break it into multiple parts. One is the use case itself and how voice helps people. And the second thing would be, like all the different kind of things which we can do to enable people with disability. So when I look at use cases, there are a lot of things outside of just playing music or just getting some information, which is crucial for many people, especially when they have any kind of vision impairment. These things become so important for them. Like, I want to listen to music now. I don't have to interact with the phone or anything. I can just say play this music, which is very natural way of interacting, right? And then there are things like home automation system. There are these companies are working on something called routines. Amazon has routine where if you have a specific routine every day, like, morning you get up and you open your blinds and turn your coffee maker, and then you want to listen to some music, and then whatever is your routine, you want to listen to the weather forecast or a news or something like that. Now you don't have to do that all manually. You can all combine them together and create a routine and say like, hey, good morning, Alexa, and she knows like you wanted to play its your morning routine. The same thing you can do for night or whatever your schedule is. Now with home security system and home automation system, there's so much more comfort you can have. You can just say turn on the light, or you don't have to walk and you don't have to find your switches where it is and all of those things. So voice provides you that kind of comfort and flexibility. And especially now with Ring camera, it's more, voice has proven to be very, very, I would say useful for people who are in their older age or adult, like older population, or people who are disabled to a certain extent, not all disabilities, right? So now they are also integrating with your third-party apps, like Alexa is integrated with the Ring cameras. So what that means is now you don't have to look at your Ring app to know who's outside. You can just ask Alexa, like, Alexa, who's out there? And just talk with them and understand. So there's a safety aspect of things as well, where voice assistants are helping, right? So all of these are great use cases to have, and I think that is how voice assistants are helping. I know a person who has cerebral palsy, and he is preparing for his newborn, like his baby in a couple of days, I guess. Now it was like weeks before he told me. So or maybe I don't know if he's already here. But then this person cannot bend, this person cannot walk, and has one of his hand is completely weak, but he still wants to interact with the baby, still want to hold the baby, or have that closeness or comfort for the baby. So what they have done is, he's a geek, he created entire cradle, however, with the help of people, and he created the cradle which is completely automated, and he can, using the voice, he can say raise the cradle or lower it or whatever you want to do. Or they also have some lights in there, so just for the babies, like if they want the baby to play with some toys or something, he had actually automated the entire room for the baby in preparation of the baby with all of these kind of things. So imagine, like, even people who are disabled are able to use technology, are able to live a better life with these kind of things. So that's what voice is doing, and there are a lot more use cases, untapped or untouched use cases, which we still have to discover, where I see voice being a very good place, especially when someone is traveling out, or are on their own, and if there is some SOS or any such things, voice is not yet there to give that information, or seek emergency or find emergency and stuffs. There's a lot which can be done given the technology is maturing, wearables are there, and so many things are there. We can definitely mature this a lot. So that is from the use cases standpoint. Now, the second thing which I was talking about is the technology itself. Now, not everyone is same, right? There will be people who have partial impairment or full vision impairment. There may be people who are like cerebral palsy, right? I have spoken to so many people who are like, who have mix of disabilities. It's not just one. So now, how does a voice assistant help for those kind of things? There are so many things which can be done right now. The far field technology is great for any person who cannot walk or who cannot, go there and touch the interface and all. That is all great. But then what I see is that's just some population of people who have a smart speaker and who are using it. But then many people would use their smartphone. So your smartphone should be voice enabled, or you should have apps. Voiceovers are great. I wouldn't say like they're not great. There are things you can do through that. Even if you have smart speakers, I feel like smart speakers should have tactile surfaces like braille language in the lifts, right? So that I know where's the mute button, I know where's the call button if I'm sitting close to my smart speakers, which I don't see happening immediately, but maybe something companies have to start thinking about. Touchscreens can have tactile surfaces too. Right now, it's all screen readers. Now, screen readers may not be possible technically in all the use cases. For example, it's a little tricky if you're trying to design something completely new, especially like in autonomous or any automotive IVI systems, like the in-vehicle infotainment systems. There are different operating systems we use. So if it is, let's say, for example, non-Android, they may not have the screen reader capability. So now how do you design that? So tactile surfaces would be better, because now I can see, I don't need something which needs to speak back to me. It's always great to have that because I'm able to hear and give feedback. So those kind of things are also great. Then also, like subtitles and closed captionings, those are great. Like maybe it is not great for people who cannot see, but it is great for people who cannot see and cannot hear, right? You can still, so there's a variation. There are assistive technologies out there, which is helping in all the different ways to the user to help them out, like a combination of things with braille or with the other kind of haptic feedbacks like vibrations or the chimes or things like that, just giving the user some sort of information, like constantly giving them feedback of what is happening. So there is a lot which can be done in this space. Some of those I think companies are doing, but there are many areas which are yet to be touched.
It's definitely, again, coming back to that sort of evolving and complex nature of it. I like how you started with first the use case. And I'm thinking about my family member is that's probably the best place to start, to find out what is the situation, what are the limitations, and what are the things that she's trying to achieve, that she's struggling with. And then from there, look at the technology and then see what to do. And, because she's a Mac user, and a Google device has recently arrived in her home. Thanks to my brother, and she's learning how to speak through Google. And yeah, then you also, I think, made an excellent point about connecting it to smart home technology. So then, as long as those things are somewhat compatible, then she can start finding her own human routines on how to get things done. So is that sort of how you would recommend people to jump into this? Or is there if people have a loved one that could benefit from this, where would they start?
So Amazon and Google are really working on, great accessibility features. So definitely, I would say having voice is a very useful thing. Whether it is a far field technology like smart speakers, or it is a one on your smartphone, whichever it is. Now, the most important thing is why. See, what I will say is. Even as a normal human being, we go through different phases in our life, and depression hits us at some point. Although we are perfect, we may find like, okay, my life sucks, or, this is not great, and things like that. So think about a person who has some kind of like, the moment they know like they're losing something, when someone is born disabled, it's a different thing because they learn to live with it throughout their life, and they come to terms with it. But what hits the most is people who are disabled, after seeing the entire world, like they have seen the world, they know what, and all of a sudden something like this happens, like accident happened. And I know a person who completely lost his like hands and legs, and then is in completely artificial, he has like artificial hands and legs, like prosthetics, or has completely lost vision. So for those people, it's really difficult to even come out of that mental state in first place. So voice assistants can definitely help in a lot of ways, and voice assistants are also learning. What I would say is, if someone is looking for improving their loved one's life who has any kind of disability, they should definitely be looking at voice for sure. They should be looking at what is the goal and how it can help you, from basic things like and even like digital illiteracy is also a illiteracy, is a kind of disability. And many people like in the older generation are like that, who don't know how to interact with the digital interface, like my mom, right, or my dad was. So many people are like that as well, and voice is so helpful for them. So I would say start using voice, start creating your own routines, and start making routines. It's not just that you can connect to any smart system. So there are like some plugs which are compatible with your smart speakers. Try to get those speakers. Even the blinds also have some sensors, and blinds comes with those compatibility. There are so many voice compatible devices nowadays. You can have those things in place. It may be a little bit of investment, but I would say like it can make a disabled person's life more comfortable and independent. Because I know one thing for sure, that the moment someone is my dad, during his last years, he used to fall all the time, all the time. And maybe part of the reason was because his legs were completely weak. And then we were like, Dad, let us get you a wheelchair. We got a wheelchair for him. He would never sit because he would not agree or come to terms that I'm getting disabled. So he never did that. And he was like neither the cane or the walking supporter or anything. He never used any of those things. And then also, that is what happens. They they don't want to come in terms with those things, and we need to really make a very subtle kind of transition, which doesn't feel like this is going to assist you with your disability, but this is a companion which is going to be with you. So there has to be a subtle way of like introducing those things to people who are disabled.
Outstanding. And the things I was hoping to discover that you've been sharing, I appreciate so much. And I'm hoping that others listening, that they themselves might have a disability, or they have a loved one or friend or otherwise that have a disability. Then I love how you said this, instead of maybe helping them and maybe positioning that as I don't know, there's a lot of emotions and psychology in there, but then to come in and really as an assistance. So this will help you. And I really believe it can be life-changing, that if people are confident to go do something, or perhaps they had given up on certain aspects of life, that they can, regain through some of this technology, which is becoming more and more accessible. So
Definitely.
And soon voice-enabled vehicles, we've heard, in the next, couple of years for level 4, and then maybe a decade for level 5. Very, very much looking forward to that. Thank you so much for joining. I will include in the show notes a lot of links to also your podcast, which is called The Future is Spoken. And so I'll check that out as well. At least also to your own website, where there's a lot of other information, and you are an avid speaker as part of the visionary role that you play. And I think I can still find the Forbes article and put that in there. So thank you so much for joining. I really, really appreciate it. And last thing for me, this is part of the Open Voice Network series. So I'll put a link to that as well in the show notes, because there's John Stein, the executive director of the OVN, has told the vision of that. And that's how we have come into contact, which I really appreciate. So Shyamala, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure.
Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe to the podcast on your favorite player, and download the Simplicity Kit from ebullient.com.